Chris and Steve, welcome to Young and Profiting Podcast.
Thank you.
It's awesome to be here.
How you do business is more important than how much business that you do. What does that statement mean to you?
You can get a lot done, and it's going to completely burn you out, and it's going to destroy you. What's a better approach that's sustainable, which will make you wealthy over the long run?
In real estate, how do emotions drive decisions? Can you give us some examples?
Every buyer is operating off of emotion. Every seller is operating off of emotion. Tactical empathy. It's the missing piece in all of sales.
Why is free consulting a fool's tactic?
As soon as you give away some of your value for free, you are by definition less valuable. The gratitude that you hope for is just not going to come through.
Chris and Steve, welcome to Young and Profiting Podcast.
Thank you.
It's awesome to be here.
I love having you guys on the show. Young and Profiters, it's a unique day because today we have not just one, but two fabulous guests to interview on Young and Profiting Podcast. So many of you are familiar with Chris Voss. He's a regular on Yap. Between my one-on-one interviews and our Clubhouse episodes, this is going to be the fifth time that Chris is making an appearance on Young and Profiting Podcast. I think he's the most interviewed guest ever on Young and Profiting Podcast. And believe me, it's worth it every single time because we always learn something new. And today's going to be no different. Chris Voss is a former FBI hostage negotiator. He's the CEO and founder of the Black Swan Group, which provides negotiation training to both individuals and businesses. He's also the best-selling author of the classic business and negotiation book, Never Split the Difference. Chris recently co-authored the book, The Full Fee Agent with Steve Shull, who's our second guest on today's episode. And Steve Shull is a retired American football player. He used to play on the Miami Dolphins as a linebacker when an injury forced him to change his game quite literally, and he pivoted into finance, then real estate, and then found his calling when he started coaching other agents. So together, he and Chris put together an 8-week negotiation course for real estate professionals, and they've been working together ever since. Now they have this new book, The Full Fee Agent. And in this episode, we're going to be covering some of my favorite sales hacks and negotiation principles from the new book. It will include some classic negotiation material that we've learned from Chris in the past, as well as some brand new material, which I'm super excited to dive into, like the difference between the favorite and the fool, the Oprah rule, and the 7 essential truths of human behavior. And while some of this conversation is especially relevant to real estate agents, we're going to all make sure that these tactics are going to apply to anyone, no matter your industry. Okay, so let's get started. We've got a lot of ground to cover, and I'm going to get right into it. As I mentioned, Chris is a regular on Yap. We've covered his story before, so we're going to focus on Steve in the beginning of this interview. And I want to begin with Steve's come-up journey. So you started your career in the NFL, like I mentioned. You spent some time in football, but it got cut short. You ended up pivoting to business. So can you share more about that transformation story, the journey that led you into real estate, and how you first came across Chris's work?
Great. Well, as you mentioned, I played 4 years in the NFL, and the knee injury ended my career like it does with so many guys in the NFL. I went back to University of Miami, got my MBA. From there, I went to Wall Street, worked on the government desk at Salomon Brothers, and then decided to make a big pivot in my life and moved out to California and started selling residential real estate. And this was in 1991, a long, long time ago. Partnered up with an existing agent in our first year together. We sold 53 homes, which is a lot. The average real estate agent sells 4 homes a year. And in our second year, we were on track to sell 100 homes. And I came up with the idea of creating a real estate coaching program. At that point in time, there was no such thing as real estate coaching. And I'd been doing that that started in 1993. And then 2016, 2017, I forget what year it was, 7 years ago. One of my clients went to a book signing in Malibu that Chris was doing for the book, Never Split the Difference. They bought me a copy and I started reading it. And as I was reading the book, it became very obvious to me that everything that Chris was talking about applied to real estate 100%. And and I had a big lightning bolt moment. I'd been the guy in real estate who'd been trying to take out emotion and boil everything down to fact, logic, and reason. And in reading the book, I realized you cannot overcome emotion with fact, logic, and reason. And emotion, specifically fear of loss, is what drives the decision-making process. So I reached out, I got a hold of Chris's son, Brandon, and we had a conversation. And then Brandon said, let's get Chris on the phone. And we set up another call, got Chris on the phone. And that's when we decided to do a 8-week negotiation course. And then we did more courses. And then ultimately we ended up collaborating for over 2 years and wrote the book, The Full Fee Agent.
It's amazing. And I'm always curious to know, from the other perspective in terms of Chris, what made you feel like you should work with somebody like Steven? You're already a well-accomplished author. You co-wrote a whole book with him. So there's some value there that you saw. I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, and it's actually one of the underlying principles of the full fee agent. One of the titles that we experimented with for that was the trusted advisor. Like, you follow the guidance of the people that you trust, whose core values you line up with, and you trust. I mean, you go ahead and jump in. The trusted advisor for me in this case was my son, Brandon. He's always been a trusted advisor, trusted collaborator since he was old enough to correct me about something I was doing wrong. And he said, look, this guy, Steve Shull, you got to talk to him. I mean, he's our kind of human being, hardworking, high integrity, get stuff done, straightforward, high integrity. And I'm like, all right, that's all I need to know. Talked to Steve the first time with the intention of collaborating. He hit all those core values, and he's always been an extremely easy guy to work with. Very focused, listens well, thinks well, great critical thinker, and been just a pleasure to work with ever since. So, trusted advisor, recommended me to him. I was ready to go.
Yeah, and I have to say, I read the book and I really enjoyed it. And I found a lot of value, even though I'm not in the real estate industry. I was finding myself thinking about all the ways that I could use these different tips and tricks in my own sales negotiations outside of just real estate. So really great work, and I can't wait to really dive into it. So speaking of the book, in the beginning of the book, one of the first things you write in there is how you do business is more important than how much business that you do. So let's start off with Chris. What does that statement mean to you?
Well, it's really about orienting yourself for long-term success. You can get a lot done in a day if you gorge yourself on dopamine-producing substances, legal or illegal, caffeine, cocaine. It does, you can get a lot done, and it's going to completely burn you out, and it's going to destroy you. What's a better approach that's sustainable, which will make you wealthy over the long run? And that's what how you do business is more important than how much business you do, because you will do a lot of business once you get into sustainable habits, keep you alive, keep you healthy, keep you happy, and then your life is a pleasure as opposed to being miserable.
Totally. And I really can't wait to talk about the fool and the favorite and the differentiation between that and how we can save so much time and focus knowing that trick. I'm so excited to talk about that. But before we do that, Steve, you alluded to the fact that you didn't really bring emotion into your conversations prior to learning Chris's work. You felt like you just needed to talk with facts, logic, reason to close a deal. And then you realized that you actually had to embrace emotion after Chris's work. And if there needs to be an emotional component to your negotiations. So let's talk about why that was such an important lesson for you and how you were negotiating prior to Chris's work, and then how that changed once you learned how to use tactical empathy and things like that.
Well, as a coach, I see my job as positioning people to succeed. And prior to Chris, I thought I was doing that. And I was having a lot of success. My clients did extremely well. However, again, what I was doing is analyzing everything and figuring out, okay, let's make it factual. Let's make it logical. Let's use reason to get to whatever outcome we need to get to. And then in reading Chris's book, the realization, the truth was that's not how people make decisions. They don't make decisions based on fact, logic, and reason. They make decisions based on their emotions. And again, specifically, the fear of loss. Most salespeople have been trained to pitch opportunity, gain, benefit their whole life. That's not what really moves people. What moves people is fear of loss. And so that, again, in reading Never Split the Difference, that truth kicked in. I made a 180 shift, and it's definitely transformed my business, and it's transforming the lives of the people that we coach.
I want to double tap on that for a second. So, Chris, I know you're an expert on this. How do emotions drive our decision making as humans?
Well, first of all, double tap. I mean, that's a firearm special forces term. Like if you want to really hit the target, you got to put 2 rounds in it at the same time. So I like that you want to double tap this. You're an assassin in disguise. I didn't realize that, but it makes sense to me.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious to know how do we use emotion to drive our decisions as humans?
Well, you make your decisions based on what you care about. And there's been some interesting studies. There was a book that came out probably a good solid 20 years ago, but it's relevant, Descartes' Error, and which basically said that people, when they lose their ability for their emotions to interplay with their logical side of their brain, they can't make good decisions. Now, they can follow directions. It's real easy to follow directions. And this came up because people would have brain surgery, and it would interfere with different points of their brain if they're removing tumors from specific areas of the brain. And then they were pronounced by then the standards at time of cognitive abilities to be cured and go back to work. And they would go back to work unable to make good decisions, and they'd be debilitated. And the insurance companies were not paying them to be debilitated when in fact they were. They were disabled because they had lost their ability to make good decisions. So your emotions are how you evaluate and make decisions. The reasons why they continued to put these people back to work initially was because they could follow directions. Like if they would say, organize the boxes in a room from biggest to smallest. Perfect. Do it quick, easy, no problem. Do this, follow a set of directions. But how should we organize the room? They would be like, I don't know, size, color. I don't know. People couldn't make decisions because decisions are triggered by what we care most about across the board. And that's really the unavoidable reality of emotions and decision making. No matter how many people try to articulate, I've seen something called compassionate reason. Some people that are determined to be dispassionate. And I'll call them out and I'll say, it looks like you're very passionate about being dispassionate. The passions are there regardless. We use emotions to make our evaluations. What do we care about? And the facts, logic, and reason flow from where we've already made the decision.
I can't wait to dig deeper on that. But first, Steve, I'm curious to understand, in real estate, how do emotions drive decisions? Can you give us some examples? You hear that sound, young and profiters? You should probably know that sound by now. But in case you don't, in case you're a new listener, that's the sound of another sale on Shopify. Shopify is incredible. It's an all-in-one commerce platform that is revolutionizing millions of businesses worldwide. You can use Shopify for any business, whether you're selling homemade jewelry, physical products, cookbooks, or a digital course like me. Shopify simplifies selling online and in person so you can focus on successfully growing your business. Shopify is packed with all these industry-leading tools and integrations to ignite your growth. They have everything from on-demand printing to accounting to even chatbots. They have everything you need to totally revolutionize your business. And running a business means that you need to get all the insights you need wherever you are. Shopify has a dashboard that you can log into, and you can see all your analytics. You can manage orders, shipping, payments from anywhere, no matter where you are. Shopify covers every sales channel as well. So whether it's an in-person POS system and you're selling something in person, or an e-commerce platform, they even sell across social media like TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. And thanks to 24/7 help and an extensive business library course, Shopify is there to support your success every step of the way. So I actually personally use Shopify. I love Shopify. I've been using it for over 6 months now. And I launched my LinkedIn Secrets Masterclass using the Shopify platform. And it was super easy to use. It took just a couple days to turn out my website. We have a back end and a really nice looking front end. And we've already made over $200,000 leveraging Shopify's capabilities to sell my masterclass. So really, I think the key thing with Shopify is because it does all the heavy lifting for you when it comes to setting up your store and collecting payments and the data along with it and the tracking along with it. It really enables you to focus on the things that matter, like your product, making sure your product is the best it can be. For me, it's my course. I really had time to just focus on my course. It also enables me to focus on the marketing and make sure that I'm driving leads to my Shopify page. So Shopify lets me focus on what I'm good at, and Shopify does what it's good at. And damn, Shopify is really good at what it does. Shopify and logging on to Shopify is always the highlight of my day. I'm really not lying when I say this. I mean it 100%. I'm addicted to going onto the Shopify platform because it's just so much fun. It's really easy to use. I can go in there. They've got like a chat bot. I can answer any messages if somebody chatted us. I can go see who signed up, how many orders I got. I can go see our conversion rates, how we're doing. I can see where the leads are coming from and what marketing channels need more help. I can also see a global view of where everybody is logged in from, like all the potential customers, where they're logging in from, what part of the world, what stage of the buying journey they're in. And I can actually see when people are about to check out. It is such a dopamine rush to see like 4 or 5 people checking out at one time. And Shopify is so cool because if people don't end up closing out and not purchasing and they just abandon their cart, Shopify will actually notify you and suggest that you send an abandoned cart email. Shopify gives you all these little tools and tricks to close more sales, and they're really by your side. I love Shopify. If you want to start your small business, if you want to start that side hustle, this is your sign. It is your turn to get serious about selling and try Shopify today. This is Possibility powered by Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/profiting. Again, go to shopify.com/profiting. And by the way, that's all lowercase. Profiting is all lowercase to take your business to the next level today. Again, that's shopify.com/profiting.
Every seller, they want more money for their home than their home is actually worth. And they believe their home is better than every other home. And they don't care what the facts say. They live in their home, they love their home, and they have feelings about their home. Same, buyers, they want to pay less than what a home, they want what they want for half the price. And they're completely justified based on their feelings. And so every buyer is operating off of emotion. Every seller is operating off of emotion. And the thing that Chris's book, the thing that he's teaching, tactical empathy, the skill of making people feel understood. It's the missing piece in all of sales. Stephen Covey got very close when he said, seek first to understand before being understood. However, making people feel understood, that's the game changer. Because no one can really hear what you're saying until they feel understood.
And if I could jump in, because I'm thinking of examples, when Steve and I have coached people, like emotions driving a seller's decision. What's probably the biggest factor on what a seller wants for his house? What his brother-in-law got for a house that has one more bedroom or one more bathroom? The brother-in-law's got a house with more amenities, is actually worth more, but the seller's going to go down in flames if he doesn't get a price that's at least as good as what his brother-in-law got.
And I have to imagine that since buying a home is like maybe you do it 1, 2, 3 times in your life, it's a really important decision. So your emotions are also running really high because it's going to be as a buyer, especially one of the most important decisions of your life.
One of the things, one of Chris's great lines, hopes and dreams are on the line. And that's what every real estate salesperson needs to understand. The seller's hopes and dreams are on the line, and the buyer's hopes and dreams are on the line. And most importantly, their hopes and dreams are not based in reality. So you as the salesperson, you've got to sell reality to someone whose hopes and dreams are not based in reality. That's the challenge. And that's what the book is all about. How do you do that? How do you sell people on reality when their hopes and dreams are not based in reality?
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the 7 essential truths of human behavior. You guys may not know this, but I love human behavior. We talk about it all the time on the podcast. It's one of the reasons why Chris has been on 5 times, because he's one of the most notable experts in the world when it comes to influence, negotiation, human behavior. And so I was really excited to see these 7 essential human truths in the book laid out so clearly. And the reason is because we're going to have an easier time understanding and predicting the behaviors of people in our negotiations, knowing these truths. And so I actually organized the interview around this. And so I'm going to rattle off one of these 7 essential human truths. Chris, I'm going to let you do the honors in terms of telling us what this essential truth means. And then I'm going to ask some follow-up questions related to sales and business for each one that I think will be relevant to my audience. And, I'll ping questions to Steve, of course, throughout it. So essential truth number 1. The best predictor of the future behavior is past behavior. Chris, what does that mean?
Yeah, that's one of the first realities that I learned as a hostage negotiator, predicting anybody's behavior. And you see this picked up all the time. How you do something is how you do everything. People are going to stick to their habits. They're going to make the decisions and evaluate the way they did in the past. They're going to continue to act under pressure the way they acted under pressure in the past, or the way they act under pressure is going to be the same as they react normally, only it's going to just be more intense and more obvious. And that, psychologists hate that. The first time I looked it up, every psychologist said, we hate this and it's true. And so if you really want to know what people are going to do, and there's a difference between what people say and what they do. And this is really focused on what people are doing. You've heard the phrase, how you act, shout so loudly in my ears, I can't hear what you're saying. What people say and what they do don't always align, and what they say is not a great predictor of what they're going to do. So what they've done in the past is the most effective predictor of what they're going to do in the future. And on a given transaction, if they relied on a trusted advisor on how to make up their decision in the past, then in the future, if you're not the trusted advisor, they're not going to rely on you. They're going to gather information from you, but they rely on their trusted advisors because that's how they did it in the past.
So basically what you're saying is that it's unlikely that someone is going to do a different behavior in a sales transaction or conversation than something they did in the past. So if we can find out how they acted in the past, what they did in the past, it's a good predictor of what they're going to do this time around. So Steve, in a real estate conversation, how would you use this to your advantage? What would you do?
Well, you mentioned it, but we haven't gotten into it yet. The whole idea of being the favorite or the fool. And this has been a real game changer in real estate. Most agents think that they win or lose business based on their presentation, and to a lesser degree based on the commission that they charge. However, in reality, when a potential seller picks up the phone and calls an agent and says, we're thinking about selling our home, they already know who they're going to work with, or they're leaning strongly in a direction. So it's not about figuring out, it's not about presenting and convincing them to work with me. It's figuring out, am I the favorite or am I the fool? And one of the ways you do that is find out in the past, how have they chosen a real estate agent? Did they work with someone they knew? Did they work with someone who was referred to them? Did they work with a total stranger? Did they work with the number one agent in the area? So one of the things you're going to do in that initial conversation, I'm curious, in the past, how did you figure out who to work with in terms of who was your real estate agent? And that'll be a real clue as to how they're going to pick their next agent. And so that's one small example of how that comes into play.
Chris, any other ideas there?
No, that's completely on, especially when their hopes and dreams are on the line. to expect them to make a decision differently this time on one of the 5 most stressful moments in their entire life, differently than they did last time? No, they're gonna engage in the same behavior.
Okay, essential truth number 2. There's no such thing as a fully open mind.
That's the harsh reality of human nature. And, you decide you're going to buy something. Do you go to the person that sells it first? Like, you want to buy a car. Do you go straight to the car salesman and say, which one should I buy? And then go with what that car salesman says? Or do you start doing your own research? You start narrowing down the issues. You start gathering information. And when you go to the car salesman or the software salesman or the computer salesman, your mind is no less than 50% made up, anywhere from 50 to 100% made up, usually about 70% made up, which means you've gathered enough data, you no longer have an open mind. If your mind is 70% made up, the harsh reality of that is you no longer have an open mind. You're 70% of the way through your decision-making process. And that's really harsh for everyone who likes to think of themselves as fair and open-minded. I think of myself as fair and open-minded. But by the time I start talking with the vendor, the seller, the salesperson of whoever it is that I'm after, my mind is all but made up. And because I'm a human being, there's no getting around it.
Yeah, and some people might think this sounds like a bad thing, but especially on the sales side, it's actually a really good thing because it helps ensure that we're not wasting our precious time if we're able to evaluate if somebody is actually already making up their mind to, for example, not work with us, or if we know that they are going to work with us, that we do focus our time on closing that deal because there's a high probability that they're going to become our client. So it is really important to understand, and it brings us to that fool and the favorite that we've been teasing the whole episode. And it's something that I've never heard before, and I really loved hearing about it. And as an entrepreneur, I realized that this is so true and made me realize a lot of things that I went through and never really had like a name or anything to call it. And so you guys write, the key to building a great business is learning to tell the difference between possibility and probability. So Steve, can you help us understand the fool and the favorite?
Well, let's go back to the example of you get a phone call from a potential seller.
Mm-hmm.
Most real estate agents, they think, well, that person has an open mind. It's going to be a level competition. And if I can go in and give a better presentation than the other agents they call, I can get the listing. So they're going to put an hour of prep time in, or 2 hours or more. Then they're going to go out to the listing appointment, and it's going to be another 2+ hours. And then they're going to come back and they're going to have follow-up, and they're going to have 24 hours or 48 or 72 hours being on pins and needle waiting to find out what the answer is. Well, we've short-circuited that to a 15-minute, what we call a pre-listing Zoom call, where we get on the phone with that potential seller, and in 15 minutes or less, we can find out whether we're the favorite or the fool. And what we're coaching our agents to do is focus on high probability activity, meaning we live in a Las Vegas world. We live in a world of probabilities. And what we want to do is we want to focus on those opportunities where our chance of getting the business is 80% or more, the favorite. And we want to stay away from those opportunities where our chance is 20% or less. So we're coaching our agents to sit at the 80% table, not the 20% table. If I go on 10 appointments, I want to get 8, 9, or 10, rather than go on 10 to get 2, 1, or 0. And most agents aren't thinking in these terms. They think the playing field is always level. It's never level. No one ever has an open mind. Everyone has personal preferences, meaning even if I'm interviewing 3 complete strangers, I come to the party with my own personal preferences. I'm going to like one over the other before they even open their mouth. And so, again, rather than spending all this time chasing after business we're never going to get, in 15 minutes, we can figure out who we are.
And how, if you allow me, because I want to hit this possibility versus probability thing again from a different illustration. I heard Sam Harris talk about this the other day, different context, but it's the same thing. Possibility versus probability, because I love possibility. I mean, I love opportunity. I love places like New York because the possibility there is endless. But possibility versus probability. You're flying a jet plane through a storm, and your instruments have all gone down, and you're not sure what to do next. Now, somebody comes up from the back who's going to give you some advice. And you check with this person, are they a pilot or not? Have they ever flown in a storm or not? Now, the person who wants to give you the advice has never flown in a storm. Now, is it possible that this guy could be right? It's possible. But are you going to take his advice? That would be a really bad idea, just because it's possible that somebody who has no reason for giving you good advice would have it.
I think that really does help us really clearly understand there's an opportunity cost to going after too many deals, right? We're wasting our time. We're wasting our focus. We have less time to work on the clients that do actually want to work with us. And it's actually an uphill battle to work with somebody who didn't want to work with you to begin with. And so brings me to my next question. Why should we not try to convince people to work with us? Chris, I'll give it to you, and then Steve.
Well, it's good if you're a masochist, if you want to torture yourself, if you want to put you through a lot of unnecessary pain that's not going to get you anywhere. I'll apply a concept that I picked up from a buddy of mine, Joe Polish, runs a Genius Network. He talks about half versus elf. Elf is easy, lucrative, and fun. Half is hard, annoying, lame, and frustrating. So we and he says, don't work with halves, do work with elves. So my company, we involve this in our methodology, and I tell my team, walk away from the halves because they're getting in the way of the elves. But the interesting thing, before they would walk away on their own, they collected some data, and of the halves that we closed deals with, two things were true. It took us no less than twice as long to close the deal and implement it. Anywhere from 2 times to 5 times as long. But let's say it was only twice as long. So you fight that uphill battle and you win. You just took a 50% cut in pay. Secondly, the halves don't repeat. So you took a 50% cut in pay to work with someone that you were never going to work with again. Neither of those two things make sense.
Yeah, it's so interesting because as an entrepreneur, you're sort of taught, and even just any salesperson, you're taught to follow up, convince them, right? But I looked back on my own journey of I have a social media agency, and it's an award-winning agency. We do great work. And I think about all my worst clients were people that I really fought to be to have them join me. And now that I read your book, I realized that I was starting off on the wrong foot to begin with. And that's why I was starting off from a really weak place, trying to convince them to work with me. It always works better when somebody's excited to work with you. Steve, what are your thoughts?
First, there's no lack of people who want to work with you. There's enough people out there. There's an abundance of people who want to work with you. I don't want to spend my time trying to convince somebody to work with me because it sets up a very different expectation. If I have to convince them, that means they were thinking about working with someone else. And so I have this great presentation and I convince them I'm the person. Or most likely I've lowered my fee as part of that effort to convince them. So now there's some resentment on my part, whether I want to admit it or not. And then the first thing that goes wrong, they're going to be jumping down my throat because I convinced them to go with me. They didn't choose me. I convinced them. And so it just sets up the wrong dynamic. And life is just too short to work with people who don't want to work with you. And it's just a lot easier. In my practice and what we're coaching agents on, stop convincing altogether. Don't ever do it. And one of Chris's great sayings, I love this, is if you're explaining, you're losing. If you're explaining, you're losing. And it's not about explaining your value. It's about do they perceive you as a trusted advisor or not?
Mm. So a quote that I think really brings it all home from the book is, it's not a sin to lose business. It's a sin to take a long time to lose business. So let's move on to how we can focus on these high probability opportunities and not waste our time being the fool. And I know you guys mentioned something called a cold read in the book. So what questions should we ask ourselves to understand whether we're the fool or the favorite?
Ask yourselves, well, how can I fearlessly find out early on without hurting anybody's feelings? Because I'm not going to ask legitimate questions. How do I allow myself to find out early on whether or not I'm the favorite or the fool? If you don't want to try it, you're holding yourself hostage. I mean, release yourself, because you're the one that's holding you back. And this scares the heck out of so many people. If they can get over this hurdle, if they can just put themselves in a mindset to find out, then they're going to be a long way towards using these skills, because it's about releasing yourself in many ways. Steve, would you agree?
Absolutely. And this is a concept that I really resonated with, because in football, this is what we were trained to do: read the situation, read and react, read and react. And we would get a scouting report every week about this thick that had all the other teams' tendencies in that book. If we were on the 20-yard line, they came out in a brown formation and it was 3rd and 4. 28% of the time they were going to run this play, 22% of the time. There were all, again, these tendencies. And so you had to learn, you had to memorize all these things. And so when you lined up, you were reading, before the ball was even snapped, what you thought was going to happen. And this pertains in real estate. There's lots of clues, and you're looking for the clues. You just have to know what you're looking for. This idea of, again, no one knew that there was a favorite and a fool. The moment you start looking for the clues, they're all over the place. And again, this is all about saving time. Like you just shared, it's not a sin to lose business. It's a sin to take a long time losing business. And, the real reason why real estate agents work 7 days a week is because they don't work 5. If they actually worked 5 days a week, rather than spending time chasing after business they're not going to get, they wouldn't have to work 7 days a week. They wouldn't have to be on call 24/7.
So I take sales calls all the time. They usually start with some sort of discovery call where you try to figure out what's the client's problems. Can I help them? Can I not help them? So what are the things that we can do in that conversation to know whether we're the fool or the favorite? What are the things that people do or say that will give us clues?
Well, the first thing is to just ask what is the most horrifying question for everybody until they understand how good it is. And that's to say to the other person, you got a lot of options out there. I mean, I got solid competitors. You could go to them. They got great resumes. Why me? That is like the magic phrase. I mean, it's an emotional intelligence surgical strike. Why does certain things to people that are vastly different than what is normally portrayed out there? Why is like this? It's a emotional intelligence surgical strike. You should never ask why unless you want them to defend you, because why always triggers defensiveness, which is the bad advice. Find out their why is good advice, but it doesn't tell you that you shouldn't ask them why, except if the why is about you, and you are going to get an unguarded, honest answer, or you're not going to get an answer. And if you don't get an answer, why you? There ain't no why for you there at all.
That's so interesting. So basically, you're asking why me because you want to get a gauge of how much they respect you and if they've picked you already and how much research they've done. So if I say why me, and they're like, Hala, you're the number one LinkedIn expert. Everybody knows you make all the influencers on LinkedIn. Then I know, okay, I am the favorite. But if they say I Googled you and you popped up and I'm interviewing 3 other people, then I might be the fool, right?
Or that one, or what a lot of people throw back on you, the person who either is taking advantage of you on purpose, and a lot of people are doing it by accident. They don't mean to be. They're taught that it's okay, get 3 bids. But they're going to say, well, it's up to you to convince me. And if they throw it back on you like that or in some fashion, you are the fool in the game.
Steve, what are some other things that we can do during this cold read to gauge the situation, to understand if we're the favorite or the fool, or what clues do people give?
In the book, we give a very specific outline. A, are they calling you, or are they just calling real estate agents? Once you start listening for it, you'll hear whether they're actually calling you or you're just part of a cattle call. That's one. Secondly, do you fit the profile? Meaning, are you the person that they are looking for based on, again, what they've done in the past? 3, can you make an emotional connection with that person? Meaning, can you get several that's rights by labeling what they're thinking and feeling, getting in alignment with where they are? 4, and this is an important one, is the conversation collaborative? Are they open? Are they sharing what they want? Or are they being very guarded and they just want to ask questions and get information? And then the 5th thing is actually asking for a commitment. And this was outrageous. We now have agents getting a commitment for a listing without even going out to the house. They're getting it over the phone in 15 minutes. This is unheard of in real estate. Everyone thinks they, again, have to go through the preparation, go do the appointment, go do all the follow-up. We're having people get that commitment right online because they're the favorite. And if you are my favorite, I have no reason to withhold that information from you. Would it be wrong to assume, and it's a simple line, would it be wrong to assume that we're going to be working together? And when you're the favorite, they say, no, absolutely, we're going to be working together. So those are 5 things that, you can run through to help determine whether you're the favorite or the fool.
I love that. And I know you hinted and teased some strategies that Chris always talks about, and we'll make sure we cover that in the interview as we go along. So let's talk about some fool's tactics that I found out in your book. There's a couple things that people do that are fool's tactics. One of them is free consulting. So why is free consulting a fool's tactic?
Yeah, this is another one that it took me quite a while to wrap my mind around, because I did this for a while too, and I refer to this as the drug dealer approach. Let me give you a sample of what I could do, and you're going to get addicted, and you're going to want more. And, we did that a lot in the early days of Black Swan, and it finally came together because we're coaching a private equity firm, and they're telling their people, because their people want to do the same thing. Here's how we're going to help you as a private equity firm. Here's the groundwork we're going to lay out. And these guys said, never, never, never give them any of our intellectual property until after they've made a commitment to work with us. Because as soon as we give them a taste of what we know, the point of the unavoidable aspect of human nature is you're less valuable. As soon as you give away some of your value for free, you are by definition less valuable. There's no way around that. So the gratitude that you hope for is just not going to come through because it's not mean-spirited on the other side. They're human. And you've given them something for free, so people tend to value things as to what they paid for it. So if it was free, they didn't think it was that valuable to begin with. And secondly, you now have less to offer. Ignore human nature at your peril, and there's just no way around that to not give free consulting.
Okay, so let's move on to the next essential truth, number 3. Humans are hardwired to be negative.
Yeah, well, there ain't no way around that. I mean, survival wiring, which we've all inherited. The pessimistic caveman survived. We're the descendants of the pessimists. They walked by a big dark cave. The pessimist says, yesterday, Steve went in there and he never came out. And, I'm going to take that as a hint. I ain't going in either. Now, the optimistic caveman says, you know what? Yesterday, Steve went in there and he never came out, but I'm an optimist. I'm going to go in there anyway because I'm optimistic. And that guy got eaten too. and he doesn't have any descendants. And that's the wiring that we've all inherited.
And so there's going to be a lot of negativity when we have these negotiations and sales conversations because we're all showing up to them hardwired to be negative. So, Steve, can you explain to us how we can use labels to diffuse some of this negativity?
Well, again, most salespeople think they need to have solutions. Whenever there's a problem, they feel like they can't discuss a problem without having a solution in hand. And so oftentimes they avoid the problem altogether, or they try and sugarcoat things or spin things or edit the truth in a way, rather than you don't need to have the problem. All you need to do is label how someone is thinking and feeling. And if you keep labeling, that's going to diffuse the negative emotions. And then you're going to let them process and let them come up. Because again, it's their decision. When there's a problem, what you need to do is lay out the landscape. Here's what's going on. Here are the options. Here are the consequences. And then you simply put it back on them. How would you like to proceed? And most salespeople think they've got to solve all the problems. You don't have to solve the problems. You don't have the ability to make decisions for people. Only they can make decisions. And we have a whole chapter in the book, put responsibility where it belongs. And if your home isn't selling, it's because you're not willing to either lower the price or stage your home in the right way or do certain things. It's not that the agent isn't doing their job. You're not doing your job. However, I, as the agent, take all that on me. Somehow I'm not, doing what needs to be done. And agents do this all the time. So it's learning to put responsibility where it belongs. And where it belongs is on the decision maker.
Can you guys give me like a real life example or just any sort of example of labeling and how it works, how you would use that to diffuse negativity? Maybe Chris?
Yeah, and I love that Steve brought the staging thing up because it's a problem for a lot of sellers. They don't want to stage their houses. Now, an agent is telling me about this one time, and she's thinking to herself, all right, so what are the likely emotions they're going through because they don't want to stage their house? And as soon as they start staging their house, suddenly they feel like they're guests in their house, as if they don't live there. And the king, the king of the castle, king or queen of the castle, they don't want to be made to feel like in their own home that they're a guest or they're an intruder. So she just says to them exactly that. She throws a label on it. Like, it seems like you're reluctant to stage your house because it makes you feel like an intruder in your own home. It makes you feel like you're a guest that has to get out of the way. And it seems like these people that you've never met before suddenly have more right to be in your house than you do. Those were all labeling the emotions and the dynamics that the seller's predictably going through based on, how does this make no sense? What are they seeing this? What kind of craziness is going on in their head? Well, what would you feel like if you got to if you got to remodel your house for strangers that you've never met, and you got to get out of there every time somebody wants to go? Suddenly you're a guest, you're the intruder in your house. She throws this out at them, and they literally go, that's right. I guess we do need to stage our house. Just by hanging a label on the stuff that they were going through.
Because you mentioned it, and I think Steve mentioned it too. What's the importance of hearing that's right? What does that tell us?
That's right, is what people say when what they've just heard is the truth. Unequivocal, unvarnished, just the truth. And they can embrace it. They're not obligated to. They freely embrace it. It's what people, the emotional connection that Steve talked about before. It's an indicator of the beginnings of emotional connections or really solid emotional connections. And versus you're right, you need to stage your house because your house isn't going to sell. You start explaining, giving all the reasons. Well, when you're explaining you're losing, how do you know you're losing? The other person's saying you're right. Versus that's right.
Such a little nuance, but you're right means that they don't feel understood and they're just kind of shushing you, right? That's
Exactly.
right means you understand me, I'm aligned.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, essential truth number 4. The fear of loss is the primary motivator of human beings, also known as the prospect theory. What does that mean?
Yeah, well, Steve, I know you hit this all the time, so I'm going
Yeah,
to
why
ask
don't
you
you go
to
for
knock
it?
this one out.
Well, again, salespeople are trained to pitch benefit, gain, and opportunity. And what they're really creating, it's the whole idea of getting a yes. How many, if you're in sales, how many times have you been taught, get the yes, get the yes? And by reaching for yes, what you're actually creating is resistance. People love to say no. No makes people feel safe and protected.
Mm.
And so, we haven't touched on this, getting in, asking no oriented questions. And we want to play to the no. Would it be impossible? Would you be imposed? Would it be too much to ask? And, people have a hard time not saying no. And so you phrase your questions in a way where no serves you. And, this is a great tool. The most basic example is now a good time to talk or is now a bad time to talk. You're going to get a much better response to is now a bad time to talk than is now a good time to talk.
I love that. And I know that has to do a lot with people wanting control, right? So
Right.
they'll be
No,
in control when they say no first. This is a hack I use all the time from Chris, is getting people to say no, because I know that it makes them feel in control, like they're making their own decisions. And that's why it's so powerful. Chris, would love to understand in terms of the actual fear of loss being bigger than the fear of gain. I'd love to understand that.
Well, yeah, and let's do a seller example who's got their house overpriced, and they're worried about what they'll lose if they cut the price. And to get them to think about a different loss would be, how much does it cost you to leave your house on the market overpriced? Because suddenly now you've got them thinking about a different loss, and it is the tipping point for decision making. And when people can't see things the way you do, I guarantee you they're seeing a different loss than what you are. And that's one of the
Mm.
challenges for real estate agents. In a sales a number of years ago, a gentleman was selling retirement packages, benefits to companies. And they said, look, all we want to do, instead of saying, if you let us handle the retirement accounts, we'll get a 20% higher rate of return. That's pitch and gain. The same pitch otherwise, let us take a look at your retirement accounts. All right, so don't go with us, and it's going to cost you 20% every day. Do nothing. Don't lift a finger. And it's each and every day that goes by, it's going to cost you 20%. It's the very same proposition, but one is about what you're going to gain, and the other is what is in action going to cost you. And you need somebody to take action. They're far more likely, again, these are percentages, this is a Vegas world. They're much more likely to change their approach, change their decision if they're focused on a different loss.
Yeah. So basically, the main thing that we need to understand is when we're trying to convince someone, we should focus on what they're going to lose, not necessarily what they're going to gain. And a lot of us have been taught value, 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 give all the ways that they're going to win, but it's really about what are they going to lose if they don't work with you.
Right, exactly right. It's not the only driver of decision making. It's just the biggest one.
Mm. Okay, so let's go to essential truth number 5. Compromise is never equal. It's a downward spiral.
It's human nature again. Yeah, and you mentioned it earlier, prospect theory. Nobel Prize winning behavioral economics. And the essence of it is loss things twice as much as an equivalent gain. What does that mean in compromise? Let's meet in the middle. I'll give in by 5, you give in by 5. Problem is, when I give in by 5, since the loss things twice as much as an equivalent gain, I feel I've given in by 10.
Mm.
And I'm not going to feel we're even until somehow I pay you back, gouge 10 more out of you. Now I take 10 out of you somewhere else. What do you feel? You feel I took 20. Now you got to get me back. It's unfortunate aspect of human nature that a loss thinks twice as much as an equivalent gain. So you start compromising, meeting in the middle, you have just started a downward spiral that there's no way out of.
And I loved a quote that you had in your book from Kevin O'Leary. A good deal is when both sides are slightly unhappy. I thought that was good.
And that, I look at, we look at all deals like all long-term relationships of prosperity. And I don't think a marriage is a bad analogy at all. So is a good marriage when both sides are unhappy? I don't think so.
No. They got to
No.
both be happy, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get to essential truth number 6. People will die over their autonomy. And why don't we talk about these no-oriented questions, since I know that's relevant. Chris, do you want to kick it off? And let's, go ahead.
Well, that was, to me, and then I'll hand it off to Steve. The first clue about why hostage negotiation applied to every aspect of life was Jim Camp's book in 2002, which was a business book, Start With No. He just lays out, and he states in his book, people will die to preserve their autonomy. And I remember thinking at the time, that's why we have hostage negotiators in the first place, because people were getting killed right and left because law enforcement would show up, surround a house, say, come out or we'll kill you, which is to take away somebody's autonomy. And that's effectively what they're saying when SWAT surrounds you. And we had SWAT for years, and people were dying right and left, refusing to come out over nothing. And that was about people's preservation for autonomy. And so that's why this human nature thing applies to everything. And then Steve has picked up on it very quickly as soon as he saw this stuff, particularly the no-oriented questions he was talking about before.
Yeah. And so in terms of the no-oriented questions, give us some examples, Steve, of some ways that you would actually use that in practice in a sales conversation.
Well, I just had this conversation earlier with one of my clients, a marketing member on their team. And, she takes it personally when she presents an idea and someone says no to it. And I was saying to her, next time say, look, this is probably a bad idea. This is probably something you won't think is, this is not anything we're going to want to do. Brace people and set them up for the no. And, it's just like one of the great lines that our clients use all the time and has made their life so much better is, we've got some really bad news. You're really not going to want to hear this. And just being able to set people up so that when they hear the bad news, it's a relief. It's almost a relief. And so just understanding the psychology of no. People feel safe and protected when they can say no.
Yeah, and I use this hack all the time, especially if somebody's ghosting me. Like if I'm in a sales conversation and somebody ghosted me, I'll be like, were you giving up on your LinkedIn journey or something? Or and then they'll be like, no, I'm sorry. I just missed my email the last few days. It always gets them. They always respond. So nice. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nice.
So as we wrap this up, I know we're out of time. So essential truth number 7, vision drives decision. And then we'll wrap up this conversation.
How people see the future is how they're going to make up their mind. Now, the future, since it hasn't happened, it's an illusion. It's in everybody's head. But you got to understand how they're seeing the future. And that's the whole purpose of the labels, the mirrors, the tactical empathy, everything. And as Steve said before, it's seeking first to understand is not enough. Seeking first to demonstrate what your understanding is, because then, of course, you're trying to figure out what their vision of the future is. And in trying to flesh that out with them by being a sounding board, by discussing it with them, by throwing them at them what you think they're seeing, they're either going to tell you you're on track or they're going to correct you. Now, you can understand where you have to go. Do you have to try to get them to see a different future? Again, because it's all imaginary anyway. Or are you happy with what they're seeing at the time? People are going to take action going forward as to how they see the future playing out. Vision drives decision.
Okay, to close out this interview, I'm going to ask you guys a question that we ask all our guests on the podcast, and that's what is one actionable thing our young and profiters can do today to become more profitable tomorrow? And I know this book is for real estate agents, but let's take it wider to just sales in general. What's one actionable thing our listeners can do today to become more profitable tomorrow? Let's start with Chris and Steve.
Use this sentence before you give anybody a pitch, an idea, say, before I give you my perspective on this, here's what I think your perspective is. And lay out what you think their perspective is. And you can't give your pitch until you've gotten a that's right out of them. The trigger point is that's right. Then you can go forward. Until you get it right, you're on weak ground.
Oh my gosh, that's such a good tip. Steve, what about you?
The most important decision you can make and the best way to make more money is charge what you're worth. Most people are reluctant to charge what they're actually worth because they're afraid they're going to lose business if they do. And there's something that I call the adjustment standard. We adjust to the standards we set in life. And this is why we wrote the book, The Full Fee Agent. The most important decision for a real estate agent is, what fee am I going to charge? And when I make a decision to charge a full fee, I've got to adjust everything up to that. I've got to become better at what I do. What most agents do is they lower their fee and they adjust everything down to that lower fee. And so charge what you're worth.
I love that. And a great way to segue into The Full Fee Agent, your new book. Where can everybody find it?
Well, it's on Amazon. I bet the best price, the best location to pick up a book is always on Amazon. Follow on stuff if you want to learn more about what we can do for you, how we can coach you, whatever you're in, whether you're in real estate, whatever you're in. BlackSwanLTD.com, BlackSwanLTD.com. It's a website. Follow up with me or Steve, whatever you need, we're going to be there for you.
Awesome. And we'll stick all your links in the show notes so people can find you easily. Thank you guys so much for joining us today on Young and Profiting Podcast. And I really enjoyed your book.
Thank you.
Thank you.